Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. So, the last few episodes of this QRP head-to-head, we took a look at all my CW field radios. Today we're actually going to start looking at some more full-featured radios, so radios that'll do more modes than just CW. So, today's not really a fair fight between these two radios. I am going to run these two radios head-to-head because they're the two cheapest all-mode HF radios that I have. So, like I said, this is going to be a little bit weird because normally you would not compare these two radios to each other. People generally are not going to cross-shop. Well, maybe they would. I don't know. I guess if you're trying to get into your first HF radio, you might cross-shop these two radios, but they're so different. It's hard for me to compare these two radios. And you'll see why in a minute. So today, we're going to look at probably the cheapest HF radio you can get into that will run everything. It'll run single sideband, it'll run CW, it'll run digital, it'll run AM, it'll run FM. It's a 5-band radio. It does all sorts of stuff. And it's dirt cheap. And there's reasons that it's dirt cheap. Not that it's a bad radio, it's just, well, that radio is the True SDX. This is the cheapest, as far as I know, HF radio you can get your hands on that will do everything. Right? This will run, like I said, CW, single sideband, digital, AM, FM. It's 80, 60, 40, 30, 20. It has an internal microphone. It has an internal speaker, although it's pretty bad. It can be hooked to an external amp. It can be run off 12 volts or it can be run off a USB power bank. All right, you'll get 500 milliwatts out of power if you run it off a USB power bank and about 5 watts if you run it off 12 volts or 14 or whatever. It has a internal push-to-talk that also works as a straight CW key. So if you want to send CW with this and don't have a key or your key breaks, you can use the push-to-talk. So this is actually a kind of a cool little radio. Now, it's got some downsides, which we'll talk about, although I will say that they've mitigated some of those now. This is better than it used to be. All right. So this radio, if you look at the True SDX, this radio is from DL2MAN and PE1NNZ. All right. Use DL2MAN's approved vendor list to make sure that you can get a True SDX that's got an actual serial number so you can update it. All right, buy from one of his approved vendors. They're about $145 if you buy a complete radio. You might find them as low as 130 something. It might be as high as 150, but generally about $145. You can buy the kit for like 80 something dollars and build it yourself. Now there are two versions of this radio. There's a low band radio and a high band radio. I have the low band radio, which is 80, 60, 40, 30, 20. They do make one now that's got 5 higher bands. I forget which bands those are. It might be, I don't know if it's 15, 17, 20, 30, 40, maybe. I don't know. I'd have to look it up. Don't quote me on that. But it runs some of the higher bands. All right, like I said, this will run phone, CW, and digital. Weighs about 5 ounces. It's 3.4 inches by 2.36 inches by 1.18 inches. It has a pan adapter that's in beta. I'll show you that on my radio. I did install the firmware, and I'm glad I did, and we'll talk about why. And it's really only good as a backup rig, generally. It's much better after the firmware update, though. I wouldn't want this to be my only radio, but it's usable now, okay? So, like I said, I'm including this radio because it is so cheap and it does so many things that it's almost hard not to include it. And it's funny because, like, for instance, this radio, now I don't use them, but this radio has the best CW decoder of any radio I've ever seen. This will decode gibberish and pull perfectly legible. It's crazy. It works so good, but it's got some downsides, which we'll talk about in a minute. Now, we're going to compare this radio to one of the other least expensive HF rigs on the market. And this is, like I said, this is not a fair fight because what I'm about to put in front of the camera is what I think is the best beginner's HF radio you can buy. Full stop. End of story. People are going to argue with me, and I don't care. I think that this, bang for the buck, is the best entry-level HF radio you can buy. It's got shortcomings. Absolutely it does. It is absolutely not perfect. But for what this radio can do, and what you get and what it costs, I don't think you can buy a better entry-level radio to do everything than this particular radio. Like I said, you could argue with me and that's fine, but in my estimation, in my experience, nothing else really compares to this particular radio when it comes to feature set, price point, power output. It's just, this radio offers a lot. Now, the G90, that's on the other page here, so let me switch pages. So the Xiegu G90 is about $445 normally. They're on sale right now because it's early December when I'm recording this. I think these are $399 for like a bundle with the radio and some other stuff. I mean, these things are extremely reasonable. Size is 1.77 inches by 4.72 inches by 8.26 inches. It weighs 4.33 pounds. So you can see that so far this is, in fact, this will be the heaviest radio we have out of this entire group that we're going to look at. All right, it is heavy, but it is a 20-watt radio. It has a color, waterfall, and pan adapter. It has an internal tuner. Now, I have 160/10 on this. Yep, that's correct. I just wanted to make sure that was correct. It is. It has an internal tuner, and the internal tuner in this thing is amazing. The internal tuner in this thing, I am going to say that this is the best tuner out of any radio I have ever used. That includes my KX2. I've had people argue with me, no, the Elecraft tuners are better. This will tune antennas that the Elecraft one won't. And then people are like, well, but it won't radiate. Well, that's funny because I've made contacts on those antennas. Like, not like, you know, on 40 meters at night, close range, but like DX on a random wire made out of speaker wire that I just stuck to the antenna port with a BNC binding post and tuned it up on any band I wanted and ran. It is insane. The tuner of this thing is so good. It is 160 meters to 10 meters. This thing will run every HF band that there is. All right. Like I said, it will do phone, it'll do CW, and it will do digital. Now, when we look at these two radios, like I said, this just isn't a fair fight between these two radios. I mean, like, this is a 3D printed case. This is a Tinker's radio. This should not be your primary rig. Unless you're really scrimping for money, you could probably get away with it. I wouldn't want to. This rig, this could be the only radio you own. Not just your only field radio. This could be your only HF radio, and you would be fine. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. Are there better radios in the market? 100%. Could you, in fact, did I live with this radio as my sole HF radio for quite a while? Yeah, I did. This was the only HF radio I owned. It was the first HF radio I bought. And this is the first one. This is the only one I owned for quite a while. And this did everything. This was my shack radio. This was my field radio. This did everything. This you could set up quite easily as a mobile radio. This faceplate is detachable, and you can attach the body to the faceplate with a cable, and you could run this in your vehicle, right? If you look at the mic for this thing, it has all of the controls right on the mic. So you wouldn't even have to touch the control head. You could control the radio from this while you were in the vehicle, all right? So this radio really is kind of a jack of all trades. Now, it is a master of none. It really isn't. It's not going to be at the same caliber as some of the radios we look at. It's also a $400 radio, right? This radio costs substantially less than a lot of the radios we're going to look at. This radio, right, like I said, is super, super cheap, but it is very compromised. And like I said, the only reason I'm comparing these two radios right off the bat is they're the two cheapest HF radios I own. This is not a fair fight. I think you can probably figure out which way this one's going to go, but we will walk through both of these radios. We'll talk about feature sets, advantages and disadvantages, and where I think one radio shines over the other. And there are some use cases where this is a better radio than this, so we'll talk about those. So let's start with the True SDX. All right. So this little radio is actually pretty impressive. It has a feature set that is pretty insane for what this radio costs. So let me hook some power up to it. Now I'm not going to transmit using this radio today because I don't want to have to dig out an antenna tuner. I'm going to hook this to my shack antenna, which is a 71-foot random wire on a 9-to-1, and this does not have a tuner in it. So I would have to, if I want to transmit on that antenna, I would have to hook up an external tuner. I'd have to get my ZM2 or something out and hook that up to this. I'm not going to do that right now. I will show you what the side tone and whatnot sounds like, and I will do that with a dummy load. But I do want you to hear what the receive audio sounds like on this, because that's one of the places where this radio kind of falls apart a little bit. That being said, the new firmware, the beta firmware that I have on this radio, has improved the audio quality on this radio tremendously. I was watching one of Josh Nash's live streams, Ham Radio Crash Course, and he was playing with one of these, and he was blown away. He was like, man, the audio is so much better in this thing than it used to be, and he was like kind of flabbergasted, and so was I. Then I went and installed the beta firmware on this thing, and holy cow, night and difference. It's night and day difference. It's so much better than it was. It's not even funny. So if you get one of these, go right to DL2MAN's website. Manuel's got all of the firmware on there, including the beta firmware. Install that beta firmware. It's night and day. Like, I can't even explain how much better it is. It's crazy. So let me go ahead and hook some stuff up to this thing. So we'll go ahead and we'll power it up. We're going to power it with 12 volts. I could just power this with a like a regular battery bank for charging a phone if I wanted to. We'll go ahead and we'll hook a key to this thing, even though... Actually, I'm going to leave the key off for right now. I lied. I'm going to hook the key up once I put the dummy load on. That way I'm less likely to accidentally transmit. Let me go ahead and get my adapter. Get my antenna unhooked from my FD8AX10 here. Let's see if it will reach all the way over here. If it won't, I will move the radio, but it should. Yeah, it will. All right, so let me go ahead and... So this is one of those places where I run good coax. In my shack here, I run really good. This is ABR 218 XATC. This stuff is really nice. It's about the size of RG8X, but it's very, very, very flexible. I mean, you know, this is really nice coax. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hook this up. Now I am going to start with the internal speaker on this thing. And the internal speaker on this radio is, even according to Manuel, Manuel says that this speaker is sort of an afterthought, kind of, oh, look, we still have space in the radio, let's stick something in there kind of thing. This is not really designed to be the primary speaker. So I'm going to show you what it sounds like first with the internal speaker, and then we will go ahead and hook an external speaker up to it, and you'll see it's vastly, vastly different. So let me go ahead and turn the radio on. Now, normally when you plug this in, it turns on immediately. There's no power switch. However, I'm running the power on a Talent Cell today, and a Talent Cell has a little on-off switch. So power the radio up. Had to get a good connection there. You might get a little flickering on the screen. I apologize. All right, that's just the refresh rate of the screen. So let me walk you through some of the features of this radio. So you'll see it's got my call sign in there. It's got an S meter. You'll see I've got a real high noise floor right now. I've got a power line noise issue that they need to fix. You can see it shows us we're on the CW portion of 20 meters. Currently, I've got my filter really, really wide. You'll see why in a second. But if I hit menu, we can walk through all the different menu functions. So there's our volume. All right, our mode, CW. I'm in CW right now. I can change that to single sideband, whatever. Our filter width. So we'll go ahead and we'll turn that down to, let's go to 500 hertz. All right, we can adjust the band we're on. I'll show you we can do that other ways. The tuner step rate, VFO mode, RIT, the AGC, noise reduction, the S meter, what you want the S meter to show you. This will show you SWR. Now you need to be in straight key mode, much like the MTR4B, but this will show you SWR and power output. You can turn the semi-QSK on and off. This is a pin diode switching radio, no relays. Keyer speed, keyer type. You can switch between Ambic A, Ambic B, and straight key. You can swap the keyer, so if you're left-handed. Vox, noise gate, TX drive, TX delay. The CQ interval, you can change how long the CQ interval is. This has multiple CW messages. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This has 6 CW memories, all right? The PA bias, the reference frequency. This is where you calibrate your frequency to get it on frequency. It's actually pretty easy to calibrate, all right? And then this shows you that this is the low-pass filter configuration. There's also, like I said, a high-pass as well. That's the firmware version, 2.0, and it takes us back to our volume again. So if I want to tune the radio, we just turn the VFO and you can see it change. Now, if I push the knob, it's going to be very hard to see, but there's a little tiny caret icon next to that 6. That changes the tuning step, okay? If I push it again, all right, I'm going to push this again, and I'm going to tune this back down to 0. Okay. Oh, I just tuned it by accident up to 15 megahertz, which I don't want. All right. So let's see if we can find a signal and see what this thing sounds like. So if I push in, I can move that caret, but if I push and hold and turn, I can turn the volume up. Now, if you listen, hear that obnoxious howling? Once you go up over about 11 on the volume, it starts to howl. So let's see if we can find a CW. Signal. Had something. Whoever that was is gone. Maybe I won't find anything on CW. I'd like to, because I'd like to show you how good this CW decoder works, but I'm not seeing anything. Anyway, like I said, the CW decoder works phenomenally well. I don't use CW decoders, but if you're somebody who wants to have it... Whoops, I just bumped the power thing. That's not plugged in real well. If you're somebody that wants a good CW decoder, this has a good CW decoder. Now let me go ahead and let's go up to the single sideband portion of 20 meters and see if we can find... Let's go ahead into here and let's put it in upper sideband. Right, there's our S meter. As you can hear, that audio is not amazing. Yeah. Now, you go ahead and plug in an external speaker.
Anyway, good luck. We appreciate the contact, 73. 2 Bravo 5, Bravo Mike, this is Whiskey 9 Charlie Alpha Baja, special event station for the Civil Air Patrol called CQ. Whiskey Alpha 4, Alpha Delta Golf.
So that's perfectly serviceable.
I think there's 2, 3 of them in there, try again.
All right.
Whiskey Alpha 4, Alpha Delta Golf. Okay, November Oscar 1 station, go ahead.
So this is actually not bad.
All right, November Oscar 1, November, you're 5656.
Now this particular station's not super strong. Let's see when he comes back. All right. So as you can see, that's really not horrendous. You can't hear much right now, but when the other station starts to talk.
Okay, I didn't copy all that. You giving me the CD, or you telling me that you're QOT?
All right, so that's really not bad. I mean, it used to be horrendous. When I first got this radio, the audio was so bad, it was almost unusable.
Oh, wow. That's a good deal for 5 watts, then.
All right. So, as you can see, that's actually not that bad. Now, if I wanted to use this to transmit, if I push the talk button and I talk into that little mic, it works perfectly fine. Now you can plug a mic into this, but it's a little funky because you gotta wire your own mic up to fit the PTT and the mic ports. But it's totally usable to push the talk and talk into that mic, and it actually, the sound quality is actually quite good. Okay, so I'll turn this back up and you can listen.
Yes, Alpha Delta Golf. Okay, Whiskey Alpha 4.
That's really not bad.
You're 56560 here in Illinois. Thank you, 53.
All right. So, like I said, I've got some line noise, and that's not the strongest signal ever, but it really doesn't sound that bad. So, like I said, with the current firmware on this radio, it is substantially better. So let me go ahead and unplug this real quick, and I'm going to hook a dummy load up to this so you can hear what the side tone sounds like. I wanted you to hear CW receive also, but I couldn't find any signals. I'll be honest with you, it's much better than it used to be. It's still not amazing, but it gets the job done. It is serviceable. So we'll go ahead and throw our dummy load on here. Power this radio back up. Hook our key up. Oh, we gotta go back. We're going to go into here. We're going to go to CW. All right. I'm going to leave it on 14253 because I'm not transmitting it. Even if I was, it's legal to do, even though I don't want to QRM that other station. But so turn that up a little bit. So it's serviceable. It doesn't sound great. I mean, the interference you're hearing is from the light, just like my other radios were, but all right. Now if I put this thing in straight key mode, we can take a look at straight key. Now when I key this up, it should show us, hopefully that screen flicker is not too horrible on camera, but SWR 1.02, 4.5 watts out, up at the top of the screen there. All right, I don't know if you can read that or not, but all right. So, like I said, this radio, if you're trying to check your antenna and your power output, put it in straight key mode, you can do it with the push to talk. You don't even need to have a separate key. So if you're going to run single sideband and you want to check your SWR, put it in straight key mode and CW mode, hit the push to talk. 4.49, SWR 1.2, and you'll see if I turn the volume back up. All right, so I can whoop. Oh man, it's hard. I don't know if you can see, but it's pulling my, it's actually decoding my garbage fist here as we're working. If I do it with the key, let me switch this back to iambic B, which is what I normally run. Now if we watch the CW decoder, I don't know if you can see that. It didn't start decoding until I sent my call. I don't know why, but it does a very good job of decoding CW if that's important to you. So that's the True SDX. So let me go ahead and unplug all of this stuff. And then we're going to take a look at the G90. Now, like I said, this is not a fair fight. And with the G90, I am not going to, I'm actually going to transmit on the G90 because this has an absolutely phenomenal antenna tuner on it. So I can transmit on this with this random wire. Of course, I dropped my antenna. Pull that back up out of there. There. so let's go ahead and hook this antenna up to this radio. I apologize if this is a little shaky in the screen. It's hard to keep everything in frame. Okay, so there's our radio. Let me just, okay, there we go. Okay, so that guy's hooked up. Now, I gotta hook power up. Now I'm gonna run, on this radio, I'm actually gonna run, I've got external power. I'm not gonna run battery power. I've actually got a power supply, QRP power supply from Pro Audio Engineering. And I have the adapter for the G90, so I'm gonna run that as opposed to a battery. Okay. Get our CW key. Plug that in. And I'll show you what this sounds like with both internal and external speakers as well. We'll get our mic. Maybe we'll actually try to hunt a park or something. I don't normally do single sideband, but that's okay. All right, so this radio has a lot more features. So across the top of the radio here, we've got our mode switches and our band switches. So I can switch between my modes and my bands up here. On the front of the radio, this is gonna be a little hard to see. Get a little light in here, I apologize. Let me turn that down a little bit. A little too, that'll work. So here's our volume. This is a multi-function knob. I can set this to do a lot of different things. I have this set for key speed right now. Here's our power button. Down here on the bottom, that's too bright. Down here on the bottom is our attenuator and our preamp, our compression, our noise blanker, our AGC. This switches between memories and the VFO. We have a function button, which switches between the functions on these buttons. A and B, our tuner, our power, our key menu, and our lock, and then our VFO, which is also a button. Now, it's been a while since I've used this radio, so hopefully I can remember what all the features are. This thing has a ton of them, so I'm going to try. Let me close this window, see if I can get rid of some of that glare behind the camera, because that's going to help you see the screen on this radio. Now, the screen on this radio is very, very readable. It's very small, but it's extremely readable. All right. So I'm currently on 40 meters, so let me go ahead and switch to... Oops. I'm switching modes, that's what I wanted to do. Let's go to 20 meters. Set our key speed to 22 words a minute so we can find a signal. This has got a, oh, I didn't show, what I didn't show you was the, I didn't show you the pan adapter on the TrueSDX. I'll see if I can do that later if I remember. And you see that yellow light blinking? That means that I'm zero beating that station. Wow, this is slow. So there's our voltage, our AGC. You see we're on 20 meters. VFOB is on 40 meters. There's our signal strength meter, my SWR meter, my filter, my pan adapter. Down here is the CW decoder, which is so-so. All right. So let's tune around a little bit and see what else we can hear here. All right, so here's somebody calling CQ. What was it, N9 something? N9 LRQ or something? I wasn't paying attention. Let's see if he calls CQ again. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to dial off frequency and I'm going to tune this radio up. So I'm just going to hit the tune button. The tuner's already on. That's what that little icon right there means. So you'll see a little antenna icon right there. So I'm going to go ahead and tune it up. You see our SWR meter. We're 1 to 1. Right, if I key this thing up, all right, it's a little high. Let me tune it up again. Let me do it with the key in my hand because sometimes that matters. Okay. Now this is the first radio we've looked at that is relays. So this, all the other radios we've looked at are pin diode switching. This one is relay switched. It's not obnoxious though. If you listen, I can't tell. Somebody just answered me, I think. I don't really feel like getting into a rag chew right now. Somebody was way down in the weeds there. But like I said, this radio works quite well. All right, so let me see if there are any parks we can hunt real quick, just to give it a shot. So let's see, who's on 20 meters right now? 42.5. Let's try that. 42. So the speaker on this radio is up on top. We'll listen and see if we hear this station. Not hearing anything. Let's try 46. That's Texas. No, the bands are not incredible today. They're actually kind of rough today. Let's try one of my sort of usuals. So let's go 17 meters, go to 07, what was that? What's he on? 079. See if we can hear Jim. No. Anyway, I'd love to hunt a park on this thing so you guys can see this in action, but I'm not hearing much, I think, today. Like I said, the bands are in pretty rough shape today. So, let's find a CW signal here that's strong enough to hear. Yeah, maybe not. Oh, there we go. So we'll throw... Oh, he disappeared. Let's throw the speaker on, and you just push this volume button in to switch to headphones or the speaker. So now we're on the external speaker. These guys are kind of down in the weeds. I'm sure you can find some stronger signals. Like I said, the bands are not in great shape today. Got some action up here a little bit. AA0YDO, I think. All right, so let's go ahead and switch to, let's go up to the 20, or let's go up to the, upper sideband here. You're gonna hear what sounds like bacon frying. That's my line noise. Let's see if we can find a signal here. Like I said, the bands are in really bad shape today, so I don't know what we're going to hear. So I just turned the CW decoder off and turned the waterfall on. There's a signal right there. And again, that real loud noise is my line noise. This radio doesn't sound this bad normally. If I turn my Yaesu on, it's just as bad until they fix that. Let's turn this up. Welcome. You do not need to be a member of the Ole Miss to participate in a net. So there's what it sounds like on the external. Internal. Oh, there's a really big signal. Let's listen to that one.
Operator 59 South Carolina, stand by for second operator.
So I'll switch over to the other speaker. Somebody tune it up on frequency because they're like that.
November 4, Tango Foxtrot Hotel. I have you 58 South Carolina.
All right. So That's the difference between the internal and the external speaker. The internal speaker is actually reasonable on this radio. It's totally usable. All right, so I'm not going to go through all of the features on this radio because there are so many of them. All right, it's not even funny. It would take me all day to go through all this stuff, but this has a lot of features. So let me go ahead and turn this radio off. Okay, so and I didn't end up hunting anybody. That's, like I said, the bands have been rough lately. We've had some solar activity that have caused some obvious issues with the band. So let me go ahead and grab the TrueSDX, bring it back over, and let's talk about these two radios. Let me unhook everything from this radio so that I can move these around more easily, specifically the antenna. But we'll unplug everything. So we'll unplug the key, unplug our power, and get it out of the way. Okay, so let's talk about these two radios, strengths and weaknesses, and go from there. So let's start with the TrueSDX. So strengths, it costs nothing, right? This thing is, let me open this window back up, get a little more light in here. This radio is $140-ish, depending on what you buy. If you buy a kit, it's cheaper, depending on who you buy it from and where you buy it. It might be a little cheaper, a little more expensive, but all in all, it's a $140 radio. It is 5 bands. It does single sideband. It does FM. It does AM. It does CW. It will do digital. Now, to do digital, obviously, you're going to need something like a DigiRig. So, for instance, here's the DigiRig that I used with the G90. So here's and here are the ends. This one goes in the port on the side. This goes in the port on the back of the radio. That gets plugged into your computer. I can use this same DigiRig. You'll see I've got this one marked G90. I have one for my TX500 also, but I can use this same DigiRig on this radio. I just need the cable for the TrueSDX. But it will absolutely run digital. In fact, people will use this for digital quite a bit. In fact, I suspect it'd be good for digital because on digital, I don't really care about sound quality, right? It's passable on CW, but I will say the filtering is not amazing on this. You'll pick up a lot of adjacent signals and things. You do have the ability to hook up an external amplifier. It's got a meter. It's got an internal power meter. It shows you all that stuff. It's got an internal speaker, which is, it's barely functional, but in a pinch, it'll get the job done. It's got a quite good internal microphone. The PTT keys the microphone. It can also be used as a straight key. It weighs nothing. It is tiny. This is the radio I use, that HF radio with me, and I normally take one with me. This thing weighs nothing. It takes up no space. I can charge my phone with this. I can charge this GoPro with it. I can run this radio off of it. And you're good to go. I mean, throw a CW key in there if you want. And if headphones, I don't usually carry an external speaker with this. If I'm not doing an activation, I just carry headphones with me. The audio is decent on headphones, so if you're going to use headphones, it's better with this current firmware, but it's still not great. And it kind of is what it is, right? This is not designed as like somebody's main radio, but it'll get the job done. Now, the G90 doesn't come with this bail on the bottom. I put that on. That is from, I think I got it from Radioddity, maybe. G90. The DigiRig. You can do digital on this radio using other methods, but the DigiRig works very well, and it's plug and play. There's a lot of features packed into this radio. It's got an internal speaker that's actually fairly good. There are some downsides, right? The receiver audio is not amazing. This is definitely very readable. It is quite small, so if you have bad eyes, something this small might not be. It's very heavy. Right, so if this is going to be your only radio, and this is going to be your field radio, and you want to go do SOTA, and you're going to climb a mountain with this thing, you're going to feel it. It's 4 and change pounds, right? And this 20 watts, you're going to need a decent-sized battery. You're not going to bring like some of those little tiny batteries I was showing you on some of my little QRP-CW radios. You're probably going to need you can run this off like a 3 amp hour Bioenno if you run it at, let's say, 10 watts. But if you're going to run the full 20 watts, you're probably going to want like a 6 amp hour lithium iron phosphate battery. That's much bigger and heavier, right? So there's a lot more bulk and weight with this radio, but this radio can do everything. This can be your field radio. It's small enough and light enough, it can be your field radio. It can be a mobile radio, right? Like I said, this faceplate comes off. You could mount the radio under your seat or up under the dash or in your glove box or whatever, and mount the control head someplace where you can see it, and it's perfectly serviceable as an HF mobile rig. This can be your shack radio. You know, you can do everything you need on this radio. I know quite a few people that run this as their sole shack rig. Like I said, I did that for a long time. This was my shack radio for quite a while. So this radio has a lot of features going for it. All right, now we have to pick a winner. And I don't think there's really any contest here. It has to be the G90. This is a cool little radio, but it's not this. This radio is so much more radio. It does so much more. It has so many more features. It's so much more usable. At the end of the day, if you're going to buy a single radio to get into HF, buy one of these. You can buy one of these things used for $300 and be on air and ready to go, right? This thing, if you're looking for a backup rig or just something to play with, this is awesome. Like I said, this goes in my pack when I'm not planning on going out and doing an activation. And then if I decide to, I can pull this out and do it, and it's serviceable. It'll get the job done. I've done it. It's not as enjoyable to use as some of my other radios, but it absolutely gets the job done. But at the end of the day, this just isn't in the same league as this is, and it shouldn't be, right? This is a $140 radio. This is a $440 radio. They shouldn't be in the same league. This radio should win this contest, or at least this portion of the contest, right? I'm not saying it's going to win the whole thing, but it definitely has to win this portion of the shootout, because this radio, while it's cool, it doesn't really compare to this radio. Okay. So, like I said, if you're shopping for a first-time HF rig, I probably wouldn't buy this as your only radio. This one, 100%. Go out and buy one of these. And then if you, down the road, if you want to upgrade to a better radio, you can always sell this or do what I do. This radio lives in my truck in a bin all the time. So if I'm out and about and I want to do an activation, this radio comes out, I set it up, I keep this radio along with multiple antennas. I've got my Gable, my Wolf River coils, and an EdFed half wave in my truck. I've got a CW key. I've got a 6 amp hour Bio-1 battery. I've got everything I need to do an activation, everything in a bin. Pull that bin out, fire this radio up, you're on the air, and you can do whatever you want. I keep the mic in there in case I decide I want to do some single sideband, right? I do keep the DigiRig in there also. I don't keep a computer in there, obviously, but if I happen to have my PUC with me, I can do FD8 if I want to do, or JS8 call, or WinLink, whatever you want to do. This radio will do everything. This will too, but it's very, very compromised. So at the end of the day, it really does have to be this G90. All right. So in our next episode, we will square this G90 off against our next HF radio. The next radio is much more comparable to this radio than the True SDX was, and it has some benefits and some drawbacks, and we'll talk about those when we get to it. So thank you so much for watching, and for right now, the G90 is going to reign supreme. And until next time, thank you so much for watching, and 7-3.